1995 proved to be one of the most pivotal years in wrestling history. The advent of WCW Monday Nitro, and thus the creation of the Monday Night Wars, permanently altered the DNA of the squared circle industry going forward. That being said, pay-per-views among the big two could be hit or miss. Make that very hit or miss. For every ambitious Starrcade or overachieving Survivor Series, WCW or WWF delivered several truly hideous offerings that were nowhere near worth their price tags. So for those of you that enjoy watching bad pay-per-views riff track style, let's whet your appetite with some delectable dreck. I'm Sam Driver from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 worst wrestling pay-per-views of 1995. Join us! Number 10. WWF's May In Your House. After WCW expanded its own pay-per-view schedule to nearly the full year, WWF followed suit, creating In Your House as a supplemental B show, sort of like Saturday night's main event, but as a 90-plus minute Sunday pay-per-view at a reduced price. Not as auspicious as WrestleMania or SummerSlam, but more action-packed than weekly taped episodes of Raw. The first In Your House started out promising, before the wheels came spiraling off. Bret Hart and Hakushi opened the Mother's Day pay-per-view with a bang, a 15-minute showcase of fluid wrestling. That was followed by a pretty good handicap match in which Razor Ramon outlasted Jeff Jarrett and the Roadie. From there, however, it truly felt like WWF 95. There was the 2-minute, yes, 2-minute King of the Ring qualifier where Mabel pinned Adam Bomb, truly pay-per-view worthy. Then there was Bret's loss to Jerry Lawler, the second half of his parlay which failed to equal the quality of part 1. By the time that Diesel and Sid stumbled to a DQ finish in their sluggish WWF title bout, Bret vs. Hakushi felt like ancient history. Number 9. WCW Slamboree. The third incarnation of Slamboree continued with the Legends Night theme that the prior events featured, but not with the same earlier gusto. While it was nice to see Gordon Soley get surprised with honors, and it's quaint to see school-aged Cody Rhodes there for his dad, Slamboree on the whole was an extremely boring, lower end of middle-of-the-road showcase that had become commonplace in the Hogan-led WCW. The show ends with a great angle where Ric Flair injures Randy Savage's father Angelo Poffo, but until then, it was the homogenized Hogan norm. Great Muta and Paul Orndorff enjoyed a lengthy tandem sleepwalk, while Kevin Sullivan and Ed Leslie, under one of the 40 non-barber names he used in 1995, delivered a substandard 5-minute bout. The best matches were an Arn Anderson-Alex Wright TV title bout and a Sting vs. Big Bubba Rogers no DQ match, though those topped out at decent TV match quality. Slamboree was more dull than dire, but it's still worthy of this ignominious collection. Number 8. WWF's December In Your House. The term one-match show gets thrown around with a bit of abandon, but it truly applies to the WWF's 1995 stocking stuffer. The night concluded with arguably the promotion's match of the year, a blood-soaked Bret Hart retaining his WWF title over brother-in-law Davey Boy Smith. But in order to get to that big-ticket gift, there were a whole lot of chunks of coal you had to sift through. For starters, this was the show where the nefarious Santa Claus made his debut, attacking Savio Vega and causing Vince to have a full-blown tantrum on commentary, no doubt sending a few more embarrassed fans into WCW's waiting arms. Then there were the lame-brain gimmick matches, like the Undertaker-Mabel casket match and the Triple H Henry Godwin hog pen battle. How about Diesel getting disqualified against Owen Hart in under 5 minutes for kicking too much ass? Despite blowing off a handful of feuds, the December In Your House felt entirely scraped together, with only Bret and Bulldog dragging the show out of the full humbug range. Number 7. WCW SuperBrawl V. Longtime WCW fans will tell you all about the drastic downturn in match quality that seemed to manifest once Hogan got the book. Just a year earlier, WCW was churning out events like the 1994 Spring Stampede and Slamboree, both among the finest shows of the era. Then, overnight, WCW became a pale imitation of late 80s WWF, with aging Hogan and friends occupying plum spots on the card. The fifth Super Brawl felt like a Hulkamania fever dream, as Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the Nasty Boys, and the former Demolition Smash took part in somewhat lengthy matches that either flirted with negative stars or barely threatened to break 2 asterisks. Then there was the opener, where Paul Roma sandbagged and openly mocked the man he was putting over, Alex Wright, resulting in Roma getting canned for his unprofessional display. The Hogan vs. Vader bout, DQ finish aside, was good, while the tag bout pitting Sting and Randy Savage against Avalanche and Big Bubba was fine. Though, do you see what I mean about a Hulkamania fever dream? Number 6, WWF WrestleMania XI. WrestleMania was held inside a shopping mall. I'm just gonna repeat that. WrestleMania was held inside a bloody shopping mall. Forget MSG and forget football stadiums. WrestleMania was held at the Hartford Civic Center, somewhere between the Orange Julius stand and Best Buy. Mania was the WWF's Hail Mary attempt at jump-starting their sagging fortunes, as they pitted football great Lawrence Taylor against Bam Bam Bigelow in the main event. That match was fine. The rest of Mania, sure, Shawn Michaels and Diesel's WWF title bout was suitably good, but what about the rest of the night? Bret Hart had what he considers his worst pay-per-view outing ever, lamely trading submissions with Bob Backlund in an uninteresting I Quit match. Undertaker vs. King Kong Bundy was as sluggish as you'd expect, while the Allied Powers vs. Eli and Jacob Blue, it just hardly screamed WrestleMania, did it? And that's the thing, there was a total lack of prestige from the 11th Mania. Christ, that was evident when the celebrities included a baseball umpire and John Turturro's brother. Number 5, WCW Halloween Havoc. 4 words. Monster Truck Sumo Match. Yes, this was the night in which Hulk Hogan and a young Paul White battled on top of Detroit's Cobo Hall inside monster trucks, trying to push each other out of a large circle. Then Hogan won and accidentally pushed the Giant off the roof to his apparent death. But fear not, Giant showed up for the main event an hour later with nary a scratch. Whew, thank God. Havoc wasn't a total loss, as evidenced by Ric Flair and Sting versus Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman, which begat a Horseman reunion, and the DDP Johnny B. Bad TV title bout. But then there's also Randy Savage versus the Pissing Zodiac, 13 dull minutes of Lex Luger versus Meng, and then the aftermath to the actual Hogan Giant WCW title bout. That's where Hogan lost the belt on a DQ after Jimmy Hart double-crossed him and somehow secretly changed the stipulation to ensure a title change. And if that's not confusing enough for you, moments later Hogan was sodomized by a huge mummy. Say it with me, the Yeti! Number 4, WCW Bash at the Beach. People get on Tony Schiavone's case for all the times he called dismal, dreadful Nitros the greatest night in the history of our sport. But what Tony should be chastised for is the 95 Bash, where he claimed there were over 100,000 fans in attendance on Huntington Beach. Actual totals came out to about 9,500 fans, so in Schiavone's defense, he was only about 91,000 off. WWE wishes they could embellish attendance figures like that. As for the event itself, well, once you get past the cool aesthetic, it's just a very bad card that further symbolized the Hogan rot. If you've never seen the Renegades attempt at drop-kicking Mr. Wonderful, it's truly the stuff that Botchamania was founded upon. Duggan versus Kamala, DDP versus Dave Sullivan, a clunky 3-way tag title match. It's pre-Nitro WCW personified. Then you have Vader suffering a needless injury during his cage match loss to Hogan, putting a nice putrid bow on what was already a 3-hour washout. Number 3, WWF's October In Your House. This was the event where, right after Vince McMahon signed off from the broadcast desk, he threw down his headset and barked, "Horrible! Effing horrible!" The Diesel vs. Davey Boy Smith WWF title main event had failed to entertain a bored, disinterested Winnipeg crowd. But it's not as though that was the only bad match of the evening. A whole lot had to go wrong before that particular bland finale. This was also the event where Shawn Michaels pulled out of the IC title match, partially because of the legitimate beating he received from a serviceman in Syracuse the prior week, and reportedly because he was afraid Shane Douglas was going to shoot on him over recent backstage comments Michaels made about him. So Shane got the belt and immediately jobbed it to Razor in a very wonky match. Throw in some Mabel Yokozuna drudgery with a horrible finish that got booed out of the building and a very slow Goldust debut against Marty Jannetty, and you could see why WCW was catching up to their rival promotion. Number 2, WCW Uncensored. The very first Uncensored was a response to a rise in extreme concepts. ECW, UFC, and other media properties reflected a desire for boundary pushing, so WCW tried to appease that hunger. But they did it in about the most clueless way possible. A night of mostly stipulation bouts, complete with a company-absolving disclaimer and a promise of no rules. Now, on paper, it does actually sound like a good time, until you actually start watching the damn thing. There's the King of the Road match where Dustin Rhodes and Blacktop Bully fought on the back of a moving truck in haphazardly edited footage and then were fired for bleeding during the match. Then there's Meng and Jim Duggan's martial arts match. How about Randy Savage beating Avalanche via DQ on a show where there's no rules of any kind? And Hogan and Vader's not yet yappa-pie strap match was fine until a drag-wearing Ric Flair, true nightmare fuel, got involved, and Hogan dragged him, not Vader, to all four corners to win. Also, after promising an ultimate surprise, Renegade debuted as a wannabe warrior. Aces all round, lads. And number 1, WWF King of the Ring. In the pantheon of worst pay-per-views ever, it's hard for any event to sink lower without stranding the roster and then lying to them about phantom airplane issues than the 1995 King of the Ring. It was the night in which the WWF tried turning Mabel into the alpha monster heel, crowning him in grand fashion to prepare him for a run with Diesel. The Philadelphia fans showered Mabel with trash during his coronation, but alas, not because he was an effective heel. The tournament had truly been hideous, compromised by intended finalist Razor Ramon bowing out due to injury. His replacement, the highly unknown Savio Vega, ran a gauntlet of IRS, Yokozuna, and the Roadie en route to a sluggish final with Mabel, whereupon the Philly crowd chanted EC Dub, greatly perplexing Vince on the headset. Outside the worst tournament ever, the only other matches were a decent Brett vs. Lawler Kiss My Foot match and a dull as dishwater main event where Diesel and Bigelow faced Sid and Tatanka. Try as you might, you may never see nor find a worse pay-per-view than the 1995 King of the Ring.